I'm Mark Peterson. I'm the VP of Sales for Synergy Advisors here in the US and Canada. Very nice to meet you today. Again, I really appreciate you taking time to understand where we fit in the ecosystem around Copilot for security. Still working past that transition on naming. On the call with us as well, we have a number of Synergy Advisors resources whom have joined to say hello as well. And I'd like to give you a quick overview of Synergy Advisors before we get deep into what Copilot for Security means for you. And we are joining you as well in this mission of understanding what Copilot is to our business, how we're going to evolve to benefit from it, what it means to your licensing and your overall security ecosystem. So can everyone see my screen? Is there anyone who cannot see my screen? Is more specific? All right. So I'm going to transition my slides here. So we're doing the introduction. Thank you for your patience there. We're going to be walking through an overview of Copilot for Security. We've got ready a hands-on lab, a facilitated lab. Thank you for welcoming Sergio. And then we've got some time here for Q&A. I'm going to assume that some of you have not heard of Synergy Advisors before. We are an international organization made up of security experts, Microsoft platform experts, and advisors whom will help to guide you as you're evaluating Copilot for security, as well as other Microsoft platform solutions. And as my screen is transitioning here, we have some fun slides that I'd like to build out for you as well. So we are a company, roughly 100 employees. We were founded here in the greater Redmond neighborhood here in Washington State. We've since expanded internationally with a significant presence in Latin America and growth also here continuing in the US. We do focus on all things security, data governance, modern work, analytics, and we've been doing this now for 12 plus years. We started out, our CEO, Christian Mora, is a former Microsoft employee of 16 years. He, as I mentioned before, lives in Tampa, Florida, enjoying the sunshine, relocated there for that reason. Had a vision back in the day. He was seeing, as he was working in the product development group, saw opportunities for coming alongside Microsoft established tools and systems to improve, extend, and help you as the end user client to get greater value from your licensing and from specific tools and products that you're subscribing to. So our consulting practice began 12 plus years ago. We then saw opportunities to support our clients with hands-on help, coming alongside them and their internal teams to add value in an interim basis on a co-managed and managed environment. We've since developed a fully managed security operations center capability supporting Latin America today, coming alongside you with each of your unique components in security operations. And along the way, we've been developing our own IP. We are an ISP to Microsoft, and we, as such, have our own solutions available to you through the marketplace today. And we have these are termed as our eSuite. And you see on my shirt here, eSuite. These software platforms are ours and are sold to extend the value of your subscription. And this is a bit of a I Love Synergy Advisors slide here, but we have a number of programs that we're aligned to that help you to benefit from some paid services and paid offerings that Microsoft can co-fund and add value to you. And we've been doing this for long enough now where we've received significant awards along the way. And there's an award that we just received that's not yet on here for 2024. We do represent in 2024 as a MISA nominee. So I mentioned our eSuite. So we do have these offerings that I'd love the opportunity if we've earned that to speak with you after the fact and go deeper dive on each of these items. But we provide an analytics tool called eVisor, and it provides you a visibility to the working parts of your environment. eVisor specific to teams, and eCryptors for data lifecycle management for you. eInspector, which helps you to prepare for Copilot and evaluating your environment for overexposed, sensitive information so that it can be protected intentionally, proactively. And eVigilant, advising security and modern work alerts for you and notifications for you. And eMigrator, where we're helping you and your peers to evolve back to leveraging your existing investments in Teams and moving away from investments in other unified communications platforms such as Zoom. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Juan Gonzalez, who has joined us as your subject matter expert, who's been also my backup support on slides today. So thank you, Juan. Appreciate you. Juan, would you like to take the microphone, join us on stage, and I will drop off the screen here. And welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And hello to everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar on Copilot for Security. My name's Juan Gonzalez. So just a little bit around myself. I'm a consultant here at Synergy Advisors. I started off my career in help desk a few years ago. So I'm quite familiar with IT and the foundations of IT, especially AI, cybersecurity, and infrastructure. And so, just to thank you all for coming, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so before we start, I'd like to go over a few useful AI concepts just to get everybody on the same page. I know most of you must have heard or know at least of some of those concepts that we're going to talk about, but I think it's worth to review them just before we go into the meat of things and throw around a bunch of words that you might not be familiar with. And so when we talk about the intersection of AI with security, this is not a new thing, of course. We all know your email filtering systems have AI built into them. Okay, so as I was talking about the intersection of AI and security, we all know this is not new. Your email filtering systems use ML and AI extensively to proactively block those phishing emails that are coming into the organization. You also have advanced EDR systems that are taking care of those complex threats that may be happening out there as well, and that uses also sophisticated ML models to be able to detect those advanced and complex threats. But I think the new hotness in AI and security is around generative AI and how that intersection with generative AI and security is going to help your organization launch forward and create a paradigm shift, hopefully. So generative AI, that's just a type of AI that leverages neural networks to create content based on user prompts. You can think of this as models like ChatGPT, Gemini, or even DALL-E. I'm sure most of you are familiar with some of those. And then some of those models can help you generate text, right? So this is the generative part of generative AI. They can help you generate text, images, videos, or sounds based on user input. So if we talk a little bit more about how Copilot for Security works, Copilot for Security is actually what is called an LLM, or large language model. And large language models, as the name implies, are models that focus on natural language, right? So they can generate replies based on given input or context, and can perform different tasks and reason with natural language. So of course, we all know the very popular LLM, ChatGPT, where users can interact with a chat-like interface with the model, and then the model is going to give back some answers based on your input. And then, of course, LLMs are a form of generative AI, so this is a subset of that. And then finally, just to review some quick concepts, a prompt. So I mentioned that word a few times already. So this is just the user input and how you can interact with large language models. So you can ask a model a question. The model is going to process that question or prompt, and then it's going to give you back an answer. Hopefully, the answer that you were hoping for. And then a quick word about Copilot. So Copilot for Security is not the only Copilot in town, of course. So you can see here, this is not an exhaustive list, but it can give you an idea of where we're heading with all of the different Copilots and integrations that Microsoft has been working on. There's a lot more Copilots than this, but here you can give you an idea of the different Copilots and their different use cases. So we have Copilots for every employee, like Copilot for Microsoft 365, which we'll actually talk about in our upcoming webinar next week. So if you're interested in that, definitely tune into that. We also have Microsoft Copilot Pro. So this is the Copilot that is embedded into Bing and Windows. We also have Copilot for functional roles like Microsoft Sales Copilot, Dynamics 365 Copilots. And then, of course, we have a specialized Copilot around security, which in this case is the one we're going to talk about today, Copilot for Security. Then you also have Copilots specifically geared towards developers and data professionals like GitHub Copilot, Copilot for Microsoft Fabric, and so on and so forth. Before we jump into Copilot for Security itself, I'd like to take a quick word about the current state and the current challenges of cybersecurity. So we all know that today the odds are stacked against cybersecurity professionals. Too often, cybersecurity professionals fight an asymmetric battle against prolific, relentless, and sophisticated attackers. And to protect the organizations, defenders must respond to the threats that are often hidden among all of that noise and alerts that are coming in that usually generate a lot of alert indigestion, for lack of a better word. And then we all know the volume and the velocity of the attacks requires us to continually create new technologies that can help us tip those scales back in the defender's favor. And we all know also that security professionals are scarce, and we must empower them to disrupt those attackers' traditional advantages and drive innovation to our organization. So just a quick points of contact. According to Microsoft Threat Intelligence Platforms and some reports from the cybersecurity world, we know that we have 4,000 password attacks per second happening that organizations are facing every day, every minute. We all know also that it takes a median time of 72 minutes for an attacker to access your private data if you fall victim to any of those phishing emails that are quite common. And to compound those challenges, there is a global shortage of skilled security professionals, leading to an estimate 3.5 million openings in the field. So this is just all compounding against us as defenders, as organizations, and there's something we must do about this, right? So I think it's safe to say that defenders need a new approach. In this ever-changing cybersecurity landscape, defenders need a new approach to confront those new challenges that we're seeing in the recent years. We're seeing a lot of disconnected processes that can lead to gaps in how organizations respond to threats. And I think organizations really need to find a way to streamline those disconnected processes into a unified platform. And we're going to talk about a lot more about unified platforms and how that can help you leverage your existing investments in cybersecurity platforms and products. And I also think organizations need to find a way to consolidate all of those different tool sets that they usually employ, simplify how teams interact and interface with those tools. As you know, it's not uncommon that our tool sets can be quite complex and require significant effort or training for our teams to be efficient and effective at utilizing those tools. And I also think we need a way to alleviate the talent shortage that I just mentioned to respond to those ever more complex attacks, right? So the question in everybody's mind is, how can you empower that junior analyst to be more effective and be able to upskill and improve their cybersecurity skills? There's also a need for a way to track and review the organization's security posture and perform regular assessments. This makes sure organizations are not regressing or making bad decisions or misconfigurations in their environment. I think it's quite common for organizations to be a little bit too comfortable with their current posture and then not do regular assessments that can lead to those security gaps and possible data exfiltrations that attackers might take advantage of. I also think that we need better ways to collaborate more effectively and cut down on those delayed responses. Today's threats are getting more complex, and we need to deliver better processes to better confront those new and emerging threats. And then security teams also need a way to keep up with more sophisticated attack techniques. So attackers are using ever more complex and sophisticated tactics in recent years. We've seen the rise of ransomware as a service, which are professional underground criminal groups that are developing tools to specifically breach an organization's security, and this has seen a rise of quite complex attack chains that we need to better protect against. So this all means that we need to keep up to date with those newest developments and emerging threats as much as possible. So how does Copilot for Security fit into this picture, right? So we've talked about the challenges. What are some hopeful solutions that Copilot for Security can help us better affront those challenges? So I think it's no secret that in a couple of years, the world has witnessed a wave of innovation with all of the AI developments that we've seen in the last couple of years. We've seen how organizations are able to apply advanced AI to new technologies and use cases. And now we're seeing a paradigm shift, as I mentioned, specifically in the cybersecurity space. And this is why Microsoft is taking a massive leap forward by combining Microsoft leading security technologies with the latest advancements in AI. So Copilot for Security is a first of its kind generative AI product. There's never been another product before that merges those two different technologies with generative AI and security. So Microsoft is first of its kind and is a leader in this space, to say the least. And Copilot for Security, at its core, is just shaped by the power of OpenAI's GPT-4 model. So this is the foundational model that Copilot for Security leverages to help you understand and investigate those emergent cybersecurity threats, as we're going to see in a little bit. And then one fundamental difference between traditional models like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Google's Gemini is that Copilot for Security is trained specifically towards cybersecurity. So that means that it can help you understand your data, your current security posture inside of your organization. It can understand that data that is coming in from all of those different products and security platforms that you're plugging into your Copilot workspace. And then it can also help you keep track of those new and emerging threats by leveraging Microsoft Threat Intelligence Platform, which is a fundamental integration that Copilot for Security has. And it's quite important. We're going to talk a lot about that in a little bit. So I mentioned Copilot for Security was fine-tuned, and that fine-tuning means that Copilot can access and understand your organizational environment by leveraging those Microsoft security products, as well as some third-party security products, as we'll also be taking a look at. And then it can leverage its different products, knowledge, and skills to help your teams be more effective against those threats. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of Copilot for Security. So part of the Copilot for Security advantage is that Copilot deeply integrates with Microsoft's threat intelligence platform, as I just mentioned. Microsoft Threat Intelligence Platform has over 65 trillion daily signals, so you can be sure that Copilot can understand the latest threats in the global security landscape, with all of those signals coming in being correlated automatically by Microsoft Threat Intelligence. So this is one of the fundamental differences as well between Copilot for Security and another LLM model that is not specifically fine-tuned and trained with cybersecurity in mind. Copilot for Security can understand all of those latest threats, tactics, and techniques that adversaries are using, as well as any latest vulnerabilities, latest malicious IPs or domains that have been seen in the wild to be known to be malicious. It also understands adversaries and their profiles, especially around criminal groups and state actors. And as we also mentioned, Copilot for Security would empower your teams to be more effective at catching those latest threats and help us outpace our adversaries, given all of those challenges that we've discussed. And of course, I also mentioned the shortage of skilled cybersecurity professionals. This is yet another area where Copilot can greatly benefit your organization by elevating your team's proficiency and expertise. Copilot can assist you and your team to perform those advanced tasks like analyzing and explaining malicious scripts or code. We all know maybe our security team is quite junior. They may not have all of the skill sets or experience required to affront those complex challenges. And this is where Copilot for Security can come in and help those team members that may need to have a little bit of a boost in order to affront all of those complex threats that are happening. This is another great way to augment your team's expertise. Copilot can help you upskill those junior analysts, as well as make your senior analysts be a lot more efficient than they would be without something like Copilot for Security. All right, so I think it's important to emphasize that Copilot for Security is not just Copilot for Defender or Copilot for Sentinel or Copilot for investigating incidents. Instead, Copilot for Security spans across security. It also spans across compliance, management, and identity, which can result in value showing in different areas and processes, right? So Copilot for Security is going beyond just helping SOC analysts or cybersecurity teams. We can also use Copilot to leverage integration with tools like Purview for compliance into and Microsoft Entra. And so basically this means that IT administrators can leverage Copilot to investigate and troubleshoot devices, for example, as well as troubleshoot identity issues with users that may be having trouble accessing a particular company resource. And identity and access management administrators can leverage Copilot's integration with Entra ID to help them understand user risk and access policies as well. It can help you fine-tune those policies, see where some of the gaps are, and help you resolve that as well. And for insider risk analysts and compliance analysts, it can help them investigate and respond more effectively to data breaches insider threats. And then finally, Copilot, as I mentioned, can go beyond that just SOC analyst persona, and we can see how IT professionals will benefit greatly from also deploying and using Copilot for Security. So I think one of the biggest advantages that Copilot for Security has is that it's first of its kind, as I mentioned. So it's the first generative AI product that help empower those security teams. And another advantage is that Microsoft Copilot for Security leverages that Microsoft Cloud infrastructure with OpenAI. So we're using OpenAI's infrastructure inside of Azure, inside of the Microsoft Cloud. And that means a couple of things. First, it means that this is going to provide you the best-in-class industry security and service is relying on those Microsoft Azure infrastructure, and that means hyperscale infrastructure to host all of those advanced general models. This also means that you can use that same infrastructure to train your own models if you feel the need to, or fine-tune the existing models and better adapt them to your specific organizational needs. So that's quite a powerful tool that you also have access to. Copilot for Security is also leveraging those Microsoft's investments by combining those advanced large language models like GPT-4 with specific security models coming from Microsoft in that integration with all of the Microsoft Security Suite. And this security-specific model incorporates a growing set of security skills and integrations from cutting-edge products in Microsoft's intelligence platform. So all of that is going to be included with your Copilot for Security subscription, and it's going to help your teams and your organization be better prepared for those new threats. So another advantage, and I think I've mentioned now a few times, that Copilot for Security integrates seamlessly with the Microsoft Security Suite. So it can obtain data and signals from your security stack, and it has the skills to help you understand and investigate the latest threats that are happening in your environment. And by default, Copilot for Security has what is called plugins. So we can see here on screen, there are quite a few plugins available out of the box. As we can see, we have all of that different security product suite from Microsoft, like Microsoft Defender, Microsoft Sentinel, Purview, Priva, Entra, Microsoft Intune, and of course, Microsoft Threat Intelligence Platform. And this also goes beyond just Microsoft products. As you can see, you can also leverage your existing investments in third-party security products or platforms. And you can also extend your own Copilot for Security workspace by creating specific or custom plugins specific to your organizational needs and use cases. So you can think of Copilot for Security as an open platform, right? It's not just Copilot for Security for Microsoft products, but it can also go way beyond that to feed all of the needs that your organization might have. So I think it's worth it to go over a little bit more about the architecture of Copilot for Security. We can see here in this diagram that Copilot for Security has a trust boundary. So this is the Azure OpenAI infrastructure that I was talking about, where Copilot is going to reside, and it's going to be making sure that it's using or leveraging those latest security controls that Microsoft has implemented in the Microsoft Cloud. And then if we think a little bit more about how the process works between a user submitting a prompt and then getting a response back from the model, we can think of different steps. And I apologize if the flow may be a little bit confusing. There's another slide where we're going to simplify a little bit more how this process works. But essentially, what happens when a user submits a prompt is that the model is going to do some pre-processing first. So it's making sure that it's selecting the right plugin, the right skill set that is relevant to your prompt, so it can give you an accurate and good answer, hopefully. And then once it selects that plugin or a skill set, then it's going to do something called grounding. And grounding is a way for the model to get the data that may be relevant to your prompt. So let's say you're looking at user risk. You want Copilot to be able to get user risk information from your Entra ID tenant or any other third-party identity provider platform, and be able to understand and parse all of that output based on the prompt that you've given it. This, like I mentioned, not only is limited to Microsoft products, but you can also go beyond. Just to give you a couple of samples, there's out-of-the-box integration with Splunk, which is a SIEM platform, as well as ServiceNow. And there's a few others that we can also talk about in a little bit once we get into the demo, but it's important to keep that in mind. So we have the pre-processing, we have the grounding. Once all of that happens, the original prompt that the user submitted is going to be modified. And that means all of that context from those plugins, all of the context from that data, that grounding that the model did in order to get that the relevant data to be able to answer your prompt is going to be included in that prompt, and it's going to be used to give the final LLM response back to the user. One important thing to keep in mind is you can see here there is a responsible AI filter. And this responsible AI filter is going to check and perform an analysis on the response to make sure there is no inappropriate content going back to the user that asked the question or submitted the prompt. And then, of course, all of this traffic and all of these processes are going to be encrypted by default. And then once all of that happens, once the response goes through the LLM filter, that responsible AI filter, then it's going to be sent back to the user. Okay, so how does that look like in more simple terms, right? So let's take a look at a more simplified view here in this slide. Here we can see a user submits the prompts to a prompt to Copilot. This prompt is going to go through several processes, as I mentioned, delivering the response from the LLM model. And then first, the model needs to determine the initial context, right? So that means looking at previous user prompts, selecting the appropriate plugin, based on the prompt input and context, selecting the relevant skills that are applicable to the prompt. Then Copilot can execute the plan and obtain any relevant data from those plugins. This is the grounding part that I mentioned. And this data will add the context necessary to help Copilot provide the answer that you expect. So once Copilot has all of this data and context to work, it can then generate a response and then give that back to the user. But before it gets back, as I mentioned, Copilot needs to format the data and apply that responsible AI principle filters. And this is going to verify that the answer does not contain any inappropriate content. Before we jump into demo, I would like to talk a little bit more about our journey with Copilot for Security during the private preview. We were one of the 12 fortunate partners that made it into the initial Copilot for Security private preview. And so we've had a lot of time to interact and learn some key lessons along the way. And I think during that time, we've seen Copilot's capabilities improve very rapidly right up before the GA release a month ago. And we've been also collaborating with the Microsoft team to give feedback and have us a little bit more involved in requesting new features to further improve the product. I think it's safe to say we're very excited for what's next with Copilot for Security. And as you can imagine, this is just the beginning. You know, GA was just 1 month ago. So you can expect a lot more things coming in from Copilot for Security. There's a lot more things to come. So we're really excited for that. So I mentioned we learned some key lessons along the way. I'd like to go over those in a little bit. So one key takeaways in terms of best practices for Copilot for Security is to make sure to enable and configure those additional data sources. Copilot for Security relies heavily on the information you have available in your tenant. So it's important that organizations that are thinking of implementing Copilot for Security can assess their level of maturity to make sure that they're leveraging their existing Microsoft Security Suite to the fullest. So this is one of the most important aspects to the quality of the answers to your prompts. If the data is not there, or it's maybe incomplete, you will find a very limited experience. So it's important that Copilot can ingest all of those different signals and logs coming in from all of your existing infrastructure. One second takeaway is to make sure that you're also leveraging third-party tools or platforms with Copilot. As I mentioned, organizations today commonly use different vendors to fulfill their security needs. So it's important to leverage that information with Copilot for Security to gain that whole picture around your organization's security context. And as we all know, the output is only as good as the input, and the more plugins you use to contextually enrich those complex investigations, the better it's going to be. One third takeaway, of course, and this is quite important, is to make sure you upskill or you learn how to create effective prompts. So this is a very important aspect when you're interacting, especially with a large language models like Copilot or ChatGPT. Getting good at creating effective prompts will heavily determine the quality of the responses you're going to get back from Copilot. So it's important that you can understand how to create those effective prompts so you can leverage Copilot's capabilities to the fullest. And then finally, make sure you use knowledge bases. So this is a relatively recent feature that came out in GA for Copilot for and this feature allows you to submit or upload your own organizational knowledge bases. And this can greatly help you add valuable insights like policies and procedures that are specific to your organization to eventually provide Copilot with that additional context to be even more effective at understanding your environment and providing relevant answers to your prompts. Now, when we talk about best practices, I would also like to mention automation. So automation is a big part of everyone, especially in organizations today, making sure they can leverage automation to be more efficient and effective at investigation and response with those complex threats that I mentioned. And so Copilot for Security gives us a few tools that we can leverage to help us automate some of those processes, right? So we can implement automation workflows with Copilot for Security. This is going to be integrated tightly with Logic Apps inside of Azure, but you can also leverage Copilot's for Security native API. So if you're not familiar with Logic Apps or the Azure platforms, you can still leverage that native API to hopefully create automated processes to be more efficient and effective. So, some common use cases for automation is remediation, enrichment of incidents, understanding business workflows, transferring logs, and then, as I mentioned, logic apps that can call also on Azure functions to help you fulfill the role of those more complex workflows that your organization may need. Okay, so how does this look like, right, in the end? So Copilot for Security has two interfaces. One is called the standalone interface. This standalone interface is going to give you a broader context to help you troubleshoot and submit prompts, interacting with all of those different plugins that I mentioned. And then we also have the embedded experience for Copilot for Security. And this is an intuitive way and UI-friendly way of embedding Copilot for Security in the administration portals that you already know and love, like Microsoft Purview, Microsoft Defender, XDR, and Microsoft Sentinel. So Copilot for Security is going to be embedded inside of those products, and you can also interact with the model and ask questions and receive summaries of threats, summaries of policies that you've created, and there's quite a few good things here that you can interact with. Inside of those portals. So you don't even need to change portals or change the context. You can interact with the model directly inside of those platforms. Okay, so I think that's enough slides for now. Let's jump into some of the demos that I have prepared for you guys. So let me just go ahead and get started here. So we can see here.
Maybe it's a good time just to pause for a minute and see if we have any questions from the attendees. We can be intentional about asking for that too. And I've not seen any feedback on chat yet, just so you know. But again, this is interactive. So where you have questions, please jump in and we'll get those addressed for you at real time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Juan.
So here we have an incident inside of Microsoft Defender XDR. Of course, we all know, or most of you, I assume, know what this portal looks like. And you can see here, there's a new flyout panel here on the right. And this is the embedded experience for Copilot for Security that I was talking about. So you can see here, Copilot for Security has analyzed the incident for us, and then it has automatically provided an overview or summary of what this incident is all about. So we can see the timeline of the incident. We can see all of those different alerts or events that happen during the incident. We can see the IOCs, which entities were correlated into the incident. We can see the tactics used by the potential attacker or adversary. And we can also see all of the actions that were taken during that incident. If I were a junior SOC analyst and I saw this incident without Copilot, as you can see, there are 25 alerts inside of this incident. So there's quite a lot of alerts to go through. And usually what a junior analyst or analyst would do is they would need to go over each of every one of these alerts in the timeline that you can see here and try to construct that attack history or attack narrative that might have happened here on this particular incident. So Copilot for Security already is showing its value, is going to give us that incident summary. And then it turns out here that Copilot for Security mentioned there was a suspicious PowerShell command that was executed inside of this incident. And so as a junior SOC analyst, we'd like to take a look at that. One important thing to note is that you can see all of those different alerts have been resolved automatically by Microsoft Defender for Endpoint's automated investigation and response capabilities. So we can be sure that once the incident was triggered, Defender for Endpoint kicked in, and then it blocked all of that suspicious activity for us. Still, we want to do a postmortem on this incident. We want to know what happened. We want to understand the risks and what proactive actions we can take in order to limit similar incidents from happening later on. So we can see here the timeline. We can see here's the suspicious PowerShell command line that the summary mentioned to us. And then from here, we can take a look at that process, PowerShell process, and we can take a look at the command line that was executed. So you can see this command line has been codified in base 64, which is quite a common attack techniques that attackers use in order to avoid antivirus detection. And so if I were a junior SOC analyst, maybe I don't have the skills to analyze the script. Maybe I don't know how to decode that base 64 code back into just plain PowerShell text. And so for this, we can take advantage of one of Copilot for Security's capabilities, which is helping us analyze PowerShell scripts or scripts in general. So we can see here, there's an Analyze button. So this is part of the embedded experience as well for Copilot for Security. And once I click that Analyze button, what it's going to do is Copilot is going to submit this script and it's going to analyze that script for me. And then it would give me back the results, and it's going to explain step by step what the script does and what the attacker might have potentially done inside of this device. So it's going to take a little bit, so I don't want to keep you waiting. So I already had the script here in this standalone experience. So this is the other interface that we can use when interacting with Copilot for Security. And as you can see, I just copy and pasted the same script that we just saw. So we can, in the interest of time, just skip all of the waiting for the prompt. So we can see we got an answer back. We can see that Copilot is trying to explain what this PowerShell code is doing. It's telling us that a user, Daniel, executed a script inside of the device. We can see the first line of the script is trying to execute a PowerShell script that is saved inside of the user temp folder. And we can also see that the PowerShell script is trying to change directories. And then here's the file base 64 prefix. So this is the code or obfuscation that I talked about for this script. And then finally, this script is trying to download the payload inside of the computer or the device. And once that payload is done, we can see here's the name of the payload. So it created an executable file inside of that device. And then it started to write the bytes from the internet. So it's going to download that payload remotely and then execute that payload inside of that device. So we can see once that payload has been completed, the payload is going to create a scheduled task. So this is a very common persistence technique that adversaries commonly use. And then once that scheduled task is created, it's going to be executed immediately after. So all of this took a couple of minutes for Copilot to analyze. If we can see here, it took 27 seconds. Now imagine how many seconds or minutes or maybe hours it would take a junior analyst or even uh, an expert analyst in analyzing this very same script. So I think the gains in productivity are quite huge here, and it's great that Copilot can help you with complex tasks like analyzing obfuscated scripts like this. Now, if we switch back to another session here on the standalone experience, we can see here I asked Copilot to give me a summary of that incident. So this is the same incident that we were taking a look at here. And by the way, the script analysis just finished, as you can see here as well. So you can have access to that analysis both from the embedded and the standalone experience. So I asked Copilot for a summary. So here's the same timeline that we saw on the incident summary, but this time here on the standalone experience. So this is important because we want Copilot to have that context around that incident, so we can ask additional prompts and Copilot can have that context in mind whenever it answers those subsequent prompts that we're going to be doing here. So I asked Copilot, what are the reputations for the IPv4 addresses that were found on that incident? Now, remember, Copilot is going to understand the context of what it came before. So all of these text and my initial prompt is going to be kept in memory for Copilot to help Copilot understand and the model understand the context behind my questions. So we can see here, it gave me a list of the IPv4 addresses that were involved in that incident. Turns out these are not very interesting. Those are internal IP addresses instead of the corporate network. So it's not going to find any threat intelligence information about those. And then I ask Copilot for Security to give me some additional details revolving the device that was involved in that incident. So we can see here, this is the device used by the user Daniel, as we saw on that incident summary. And that user Daniel has been using the following device inside of the organization. We can see the name of the device. We can see the compliance status. So this is really important. We can see here that this device is non-compliant. So that usually means that the device is not in compliant with our security policies that our administrators have set up inside of our organization. And then we get some additional details here for this device. So this is the next prompt. I asked Copilot to give me some additional details. And then here we can see that Copilot is specifying the reasons why that device is not compliant. So it's telling us that the device doesn't have BitLocker currently enabled, and that's the reason why it's not being compliant so far. It's also telling us some useful information, like giving us the group for which the device belongs to. So it belongs to the Windows 10 corporate device group. And then finally, I asked Copilot to give me a list of vulnerabilities, right? So we know the device is not compliant and we want to understand what are some additional risks that the device may encounter in the future. So one thing to look for is list the vulnerabilities. So here I asked Copilot to list those vulnerabilities with me. You'd notice Copilot created a KQL query for us. So this is yet another useful skill that Copilot has in his repertoire. Once he created that KQL query, this is going to explain what the query is doing. So you can see here the description. So it's just looking for vulnerabilities for that device that we found. So here's the name of the device we saw before. And then once Copilot creates a query, it's going to execute it for us. So you can see here, there's a table listing all of those different vulnerabilities that it found. And then it turns out it found quite a bit vulnerabilities. If we take a look at the answer, there's more than 150 rows. So that means more than 150 vulnerabilities that are being present in that device. So there's quite a lot of things to go through. Now, since there's so many vulnerabilities, we just want to focus on one, let's say. So the next prompt, I asked Copilot for Security to give me the most impactful or critical vulnerability for that particular device. So this is what it found. So it's just one result here that you can see. So it's going to give me the details about the vulnerability. It looks like this is a vulnerability coming from Adobe Acrobat Reader, which is Adobe's PDF reader. And then it's also going to give me details like the CVE ID. And this CVE ID is quite useful if you want to further investigate that vulnerability yourself. Another skill that Copilot for Security has is precisely helping us investigate those vulnerabilities. So you can see here, if we go into prompts and we look for the prompt books. So prompt books are just a series of prompts that are going to be executed sequentially. So this is another way we can leverage Copilot for automation. And in this case, we're interested in vulnerability. So you can see here, there's a vulnerability impact assessment prompt. So this is one of the prompts that come out of the box with Copilot for Security. And then here in the prompt, as you can see, there are 4 prompts on this prompt book. So once I input the required information, so the CVE ID that I just got from the previous prompt, once I paste that and click run, Copilot is going to then execute all of the prompts that you see here on the screen. So this is quite useful for those automatable processes that you may have inside of your organization if you want to speed up the process of investigation and response on those threats. So I already ran this query. So I have another session here on this tab. And as you can see, here are the prompts that we saw in the prompt book. So it's summarizing the CVE that we just found. So it's telling us what the CVE does, what it's related to. It's going to also give us a bulleted list of the technologies that are susceptible to this vulnerability. So you can see here all of the versions of Adobe Reader that are vulnerable for this susceptible to this vulnerability. And then if there are any threat intelligence articles, so this is that integration with Microsoft Threat Intelligence, provide a summary of those TI articles if you found any. In this case, it didn't find any. And then the next prompt is going to summarize the threat actors that are known to be associated with the CVE. Sometimes threat actors take advantage of CVEs to compromise systems or organizations. So it's quite important to understand what those tactics that those adversaries are using. And then finally, we're asking Copilot to give us some mitigations that we can put in place in order to remediate that vulnerability that we found. And then once all of this is done, it's going to give us an executed summary detailing all of those findings, giving us a summary of the vulnerability, the findings, and the recommended steps for remediation. So this only took a few minutes to run that prompt book. And as you can imagine, all of this is quite compounding, right? So we started with that script analysis. We then started with an analysis of vulnerabilities. And then once we talk about automation or logic apps or APIs, you can even go further to be more efficient and kind of leverage those out-of-the-box automation options that Copilot for Security has. So let's switch back to the initial prompt. So we still want to investigate the incident. We did find some interesting results here. And so finally here we're asking Copilot to give us a summary, an executed summary, summarizing this investigation. And we're also telling it that the reports should be suited for non-technical audiences. So as we can see here in plain English, it's going to give us back that incident report for us so we can share this with our stakeholders and the relevant people inside of our organization. And then finally, I asked Copilot for Security to give me some configuration changes that I should take in order to avoid similar incidents in the future. I asked for specific actionable guidance on improving that device security, right? We want to make sure we lock down that device so it doesn't, similar incidents don't happen in the future, or maybe we want to avoid that device from being compromised. We can see here it's giving us some contextual and useful recommendation recommendations based on the findings. So it's taking that context that we talked about in mind. So it's telling us to enable BitLocker, which is the reason why the device was non-compliant in the first place. It's telling us to update Adobe Acrobat Reader so we can kind of fix or remediate that vulnerability that we found. It's telling us to regularly update our operating system. And then here are the specific guidance on how we can enable some of those features. So it's actually going through all of the different Intune options so we can set the configuration profile on this device to fix its compliance state. And then once this is all done, you can simply share the findings with some of the people inside of your team. So here you can add people to this session so they can see the results of your investigation. You can also copy the link so people that have access to Copilot for Security can come in and review your results. So this is a great way for teams to collaborate with each other. Okay, so I did mention we'd go through some of the plugins. So here are the out-of-the-box plugins that Copilot for Security has. So these are all those Microsoft products that I mentioned. So Copilot for Security can integrate and it can understand data coming in from all of these different services. And we also have some third-party platforms and services that Copilot can help us configure and then get data from those third-party services to further enrich and have a more complete picture of what is happening inside of our organization. So you can see there's quite a few vendors, and I'm sure there's a lot more vendors to come. So definitely this is just the beginning, as I mentioned, and we're quite excited for what's coming as well. And then finally, here are the custom plugins that I also mentioned. So these are plugins that we've created. And those plugins can also speak or interact with third-party APIs. So you can import all of that data and all of those different signals, whatever those are coming from. So this is quite useful. And then finally, I did mention also the knowledge bases. So here's how you can leverage that feature. You can upload your knowledge bases here inside of Copilot. So if you have a document, a PDF, TXT, or Markdown document, you can upload those documents here. And then Copilot can use that documentation, that knowledge base, to further contextualize and enrich those prompts and investigations.